Welcome to the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast, a peek behind the curtain of some of the most intimate conversations that people have with Ezra as an intimacy coach. Join us for a session already in progress. Awesome, and I'm excited you wanted to talk about CNC and also like different dynamic possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you are kinky and you're into power exchange, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what dynamics do you say, would you say you have some experience with already?
So my 18-month dynamic was basically total power exchange. So I don't think I have much experience in any other dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so total power exchange, like master slave, you have no say in anything, right?
Right, master slave and then owner pet.
Okay, so is there two different dynamics or the same one?
They were the same. We just kind of switched between both.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So are there other dynamics that you found that, you'd like to learn more about?
Well, daddy and baby girl always sounded like the one I'm most personally interested in. And then I kind of relate to being a brat, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I remember that we were talking about how your dynamic previously was maybe not really healthy.
No.
Yeah. And so when we talk about power exchange, we often talk about the gifting of power. So you might decide as a couple that you're going to give that partner the ability to make certain choices for you, right? But the thing that is really important, the thing that really makes the difference between abuse and healthy power exchange is agency, right? Mm-hmm. So you should be able to say at any point, you know what? I actually would like to start making that choice for myself again. I'm not interested in continuing this. And you should be able to do that without any repercussions, without any negative consequences. You should have control over how much control you have.
I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how you can find abusive relationships really quickly, is to say, do you get to change the power dynamic? Do you get to, affect what choices you are allowed to make? Right. And when the answer is no, it's almost always abusive.
Okay. That reminds me of the FRIES acronym of consent, like freely given, reversible. That was in your book.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So for those that don't know, the FRIES acronym was put out by Planned Parenthood, and it describes consent, like full consent, as freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, or embodied, and specific. Right. And the one that really comes to play here in this conversation is reversibility. Right. If you say, okay, I want to do this, and then in the middle of it, you go, you know what, I'm not liking this, I don't want to do this. If that person says to you, well, you already said yes, then they're not allowing you to reverse consent. And that's really problematic. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have the right to reverse consent at any time. When we talk about power exchange, I like to think about a scale where master slave or total power exchange or owner property is on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum is top/bottom, right?
Okay.
And top/bottom is like one person is doing the thing to the other person, but nobody is more in charge than anyone else, right? So
like a play partner?
Yeah, well, so that's tough because play partners describes a relationship. Yeah, so we can get into that, but more no power exchange, right? Top bottom is no power exchange. I like spanking, you like giving spankings, why don't you give me a spanking? And there's no decision making being made for anybody.
Okay.
Right. I could even be more dominant in that situation and say, hey, I like spankings, give me the spanking this way for this amount of time in this position to this music. and I'm kind of dominating the situation, right? I'm like
Yeah.
dictating what's happening, but I'm bottoming. Yeah. And oftentimes you see sort of like a princess sort of dynamic where somebody is like wants to bottom, but is also like really controlling. So, and then there's all kinds of stuff in the middle, right? And I like to say Dom sub is in the middle where there's like some power exchange. But it also, that really kind of needs to be negotiated. There's not really a hard definition of what a Dom sub relationship is. That way, it really needs to be ironed out by each pair. And then there's like pet handler, daddy dom, little girl. And I don't mean to be like heteronormative here. It can definitely be mommy dom, little boy, or mommy dom, little girl, or daddy dom, little boy. Those all happen, and they're just as valid.
Doesn't that one imply that like the daddy or the mommy is only doing these things because they care about their sub and they just want to make them happy? Or is that just like a generalization?
Well, I think it's a generalization, but I think there's some truth behind it too. I think that when you're doing like, daddy dom play, that there is this element of care. There's this element of I'm doing this for your own good, right? Like we always hear about like daddy dom energy saying like drink your water.
Yeah.
Right. Which is important. We all need to drink our water.
I'm drinking coffee, so
there you go. Bad girl.
yeah.
Just kidding. But yeah, and I think that it's interesting because we can like arbitrarily place those other kinds of dynamics on the spectrum and say they kind of exist here. But like for example, a pet and handler dynamic can be, I can be a handler where I'm like, it's a stray cat and it kind of lives with me and I have like no authority, right? Or I can be like, this is my highly trained guard dog. It doesn't do a thing without my permission. Right. And so there's that power exchange. That's a really wide range of how much power is exchanged in that dynamic, if that makes sense, So I like to say it's top, bottom on the easy side, and on the, no power exchange side, it's master slave on the lots of power exchange side, or owner property, if you will. And then in the middle is dom sub. But there are also a multitude of other kinds of dynamics that people can do. And they are somewhere on the spectrum. And that really is something that ought to be negotiated each time, each dynamic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The thing that I love about BDSM is it's like a write your own adventure, write your own ending adventure, right?
Really?
So you get to kind of, instead of dealing with these prescribed rules, we get to really decide what our rules are.
I read a book about BDSM and it was saying how like master slave is like level 10. It's like the most difficult and you kind of can like work up to it and not just start out with it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that if you don't feel like really driven to one particular dynamic, I wouldn't start with master slave, right? I think that there are people who very well know like the dynamics that feel good to them. And if that's where you're at, if you feel like, total power exchange is the only way that you want to be, then go for it, right? I'm not going to say that you have to level up, but it is very challenging, especially 24/7, right? So, you can talk about having a scene where we're like, okay, once a week, we're going to get together. And for this hour, you don't make any choices, right? I'm making all the choices. And hopefully you've had lots and lots of conversations ahead of time so that the master knows exactly what you are limited by or interested in or like meh about, right? So they know all of those things. And so they can make those choices for you with full knowledge of your interests and abilities and limits, right? And then sort of on the other end of the spectrum of intensity and duration, I should say, is 24/7, where like you are playing that role all the time. And I think jumping into 24/7 master slave is the most challenging thing that anybody can do. Right. And so try it out for an hour at a time. Right. And then maybe expand from there. And I think that those 24/7 master slave relationships can be really rich, can be really valuable, and can be really wonderful. But I think they're also like maybe the most vulnerable to abusive situations, right? Because they say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you're having a total power exchange, there is more potential for bad acting. And then you wanted to talk about consensual non-consent also, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So other terms for consensual non-consent are force fantasy. Also, it is termed rape play. And that's a term I'm going to avoid for the rest of the podcast episode because that could be really triggering for some people, but that is what we're talking about. There's this hang up that a lot of people experience around this particular fantasy, and it doesn't make you a bad person to have that fantasy. It doesn't either as the doer or the person being done, right? It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you want to have a non-consensual experience, right? And it is the most popular fantasy across cultures. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, it's still the most popular fantasy.
So how do you do it safely?
Yeah, you talk about it a lot.
Huh.
Yeah. And, you have safe words, right? So I think safe words exist most importantly for consensual non-consent play. And I think it's also important to realize that there's like a wide range of activities that can fall under this umbrella, right? Like, for example, if I like tickling you and you like being tickled, but you want to pretend you don't like it, right?
Oh, that would still count.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh. If you're like, no, stop, don't, and you've already talked to me ahead of time to let me know that no, stop, and don't are not indicators that you are done.
Okay.
Right? Instead, we have negotiated a word like red, which is the most popular. People also go with a lot of different fruits like pineapple or something. And you say pineapple, and I know that means we are done. Full stop, right? You can also negotiate a word that indicates that you want to slow down or take a break or switch positions or switch implements or whatever, right? So that's often termed yellow. So those are like the stoplight indicators, like red and yellow. But we can come up with a different fruit term if we want to, right? So if you say kumquat, then I know I need to sort of take a couple breaths, let you catch your air, and then we're going to keep going, right?
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I would say consensual non-consent is any time that no doesn't mean no. And the other thing I would say is you really want to negotiate everything. You want to say, okay, this is how it's going to go. If this happens, if I start to cry, are we done? Or is this still something that we're okay doing? Right? Do I need to, if you start to cry, do I need to check in with you? Or does it mean the scene's over? Like, there's all kinds of indicators that we can like have a contingency plan, right? So if this happens, what do we do? So those are really important to have. And also, like, how much struggling do we want to do?
Okay.
Right? Like, personally, like I do enjoy CNC, but I'm more interested in like the sort of coercive aspect, like pretending to be coercing somebody. So I'd be like,
you're like an interviewer or something, and like,
or you owe me rent.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you got to find a way to pay it. I say, well, I think we can work something out. I don't want to have to
No.
kick you out, right? And then we have our, otherwise consensual play, but I'm manipulating you.
Yeah, I always think it's like CNC. Okay, it's like you're walking down the street or you're walking into your house and someone sneaks up on you. It's like a big element of surprise. So it's hard to talk about that ahead of time because you wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily true, right? You can negotiate way ahead of time and not know when it's going to happen, right? You can also do something called spamming, where you get permission to do like 100 different things. It's one of them, but you don't know which one.
That's funny.
That's actually in my book.
It was.
Mindfucking Mindfully, a guide to mental manipulation for BDSM and sadomasochism, available on Amazon as an audiobook, ebook, and paperback. And if you want it signed, I will sign it, but not in human blood. I don't know who started that rumor, but you have to get in touch with me to get it signed. You can't get it signed on Amazon. But yeah, we talk about spamming and long-term planning as options to sort of maintain the surprise. And if you're going for like a full-on sort of assault type CNC, you really ought to negotiate how much struggle is going to be involved, just for practicality's sake. Like if I'm in a scene with somebody and they're going to be struggling against me the whole time, at a certain point, I'm going to lose interest. I can't.
And if it was like a real life situation, if the person was actually assaulting you, they would not stop at any amount of violence. So it's a thin line between being too violent.
Certainly, yeah. You want to make sure that the level of impact or intensity is something that's desired. You don't want to get, too rough with somebody, or you also don't want to ask somebody to be more rough than they can be, right? So you need to come to an agreement ahead of time. But like let's say, for example, that our definition of CNC is that we're going to have a sexual interaction and you're going to be like pushing me away the whole time, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that personally. I can't stand the whole time for you to be pushing me away. We're going to have to spend a few minutes up front where you can push me away all you want, and then I need you to give in. Then I need you to stop pushing me, or I'm just going to lose interest.
I see.
Personally,
Yeah.
I can't deal with like a constant reminder of disinterest. Like at a certain point, I need you to drop the charade, and we're going to have to, enjoy each other without the struggle. Because I can't put up. I mean, maybe it's cardio. Maybe I need to do more cardio. But I can't do that. I'm going to lose. I'm going to get exhausted and say, I can't do that. Right. And so that's something we need to discuss ahead of time, because if you're expecting to push me off the whole time and I'm expecting you to push, play push me for like the first 5 minutes, then we're going to have a bad time. And also, you have to be mindful of your surroundings, right? If you have a roommate, talk to your roommate ahead of time, right? Yeah. If you're at a dungeon, this is something that you're going to want to talk to the dungeon monitor about, right?
Yeah. So
that the dungeon monitor is not worried that you are being taken advantage of.
Or anyone watching would just be like, hello, what's going on?
And I wouldn't recommend doing something like this in public, right? Like a lot of times people want to do a kidnapping scene and it starts somewhere public, and getting arrested is a real boner killer. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Emily, is this exercise we did in a previous session about working on our beliefs, and specifically like the ways that we talk to ourselves, right?
The bombastic antithesis.
That's right. Yeah, the bombastic antithesis. I think a lot of people will say like, oh, you've said this negative thing about yourself. How about a positive one? And start with something really easy, something light, something that you'll believe. And I'm like, fuck that. If you come in with a -1, I want to come back with a +10. Like, let's just blow it out of the water, right? And so that's where we're over the top, bombastic antithesis. So what were some that really stuck with you?
So my painting that I made, it says I'm a treasure on it, But the real bombastic antithesis is I'm a fucking treasure.
There you go. Yeah. And what does that combat? Was there a message that you were telling yourself about your value?
I think it was that my needs and boundaries aren't important.
Mm-hmm.
Or that like I'm not special, something like that.
Sure. Yeah. So if you hear yourself saying I'm not special, now you've got this like ammunition to fire back and say, I'm a fucking treasure.
Yeah, and I put it on my wall so it stares at me like every 5 minutes.
I love it. Yeah, you made a painting, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome.
Oh, and similar to that, we said my needs are the most fucking important.
There you go. My needs are the most fucking important. Yeah, because there was this message that your needs were not important, right?
Yeah.
Which is really not okay. It's gonna get you in relationships where people don't value your needs, because you're gonna find people that accept that.
And I didn't realize that in a master-slave dynamic, you still could make your needs known. Like I didn't know that.
Absolutely. My plants tell me when they need watering. They don't demand to be watered, but they certainly let me know. They get all sad. Like, do you see me? Do you see me, Daddy?
If plants could talk.
Right. If plants could talk. Do we want to go a little farther with the beliefs than we did before?
Okay.
So I've got the list in front of me that we came up with.
Me too.
So is there one that feels like particularly troublesome to you that makes sense to try to go after?
Number 2 was I can't handle being alone.
Mm-hmm. And what are you right now?
What's the opposite of that?
No. What do you do? Do you have a partner right now? No. So you're alone?
Yeah.
Are you handling it?
Apparently.
Apparently you are. Yeah. So what are we going to rate? So, okay, first we need to measure the benefit and the consequence of that belief, right? So what is the benefit of believing that you can't be alone?
It justifies settling for someone that's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it justifies settling somebody who's not good enough. It gives you permission to not be responsible for being comfortable being alone, because it takes work, right? I don't think anybody's born being their own best friend. You got to figure it out. You got to figure out how to do that. And if you say, I just can't handle being alone, you don't have to figure out how to be your own best friend. And what's the consequence?
You have these snakes in your inner circle.
Yeah, you desperately fill your life, even without any regard for the quality of the people you're filling your life with, right? Is not being responsible for being a good friend to yourself worth filling your life with snakes?
No.
Okay, so we definitely don't want this one, right? So what are we going to tell ourselves when we hear that message of I can't handle being alone?
I am good fucking company.
There you go. I'm good fucking company. Yeah, I like it. Way over the top. I love it. You're really using the swears.
Your idea.
Yeah, no, I like it. It gives it some oomph.
It does.
Like putting a little whiskey in your tea.
Put a little Kahlua in your coffee or something.
There you go. A little Kahlua in the coffee. You might even say like, I'm awesome alone, or, I'm the best company,
Exactly.
And I think, yeah. So what feels right to you? Is it the one that we said, what was it? I'm the best fucking company or something?
I am good fucking company.
I'm good fucking company. Yeah. So write it down, get it somewhere you see it often, and make sure it's in your head so that when you get that sneaky little thought of I can't handle being alone, then you got that locked and loaded. And like I said, it's work to be good company. So, but now that you know that you're good fucking company, you can make investments into being better
Yeah.
alone with yourself, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, the way that I would explain it before is like one of the biggest challenges for me was feeling attractive, right? And if I said, "Oh, I'm not attractive," then I wouldn't think twice about just going shopping in sweatpants and like a dirty t-shirt, right? So I haven't made myself as attractive as I could be because I feel like it's a lost cause. And so it becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you tell yourself I can't handle being alone, you're never going to invest in things or skills that help you be better on your own, right? Like you'd never buy yourself bubble bath because you don't ever look forward to spending time by yourself. But if you do, I'm good fucking company, you know what I need? A bubble bath,
Yeah,
right? And then you get that bubble bath, or you clean up the bathroom so you can feel sexy in the bathroom or whatever, right?
exactly.
I love dating myself. I like taking myself out on a date because I always put out. So
100% success rate.
yeah.
That's a hard one for me though. If I have to like go to a restaurant or something by myself, I just won't do it.
Yeah. Well, why is that?
I guess I feel like people are judging me, or I'm not 100% safe just being outside at night alone in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are real dangers. And so I can't tell you what danger is real and what is imagined. But there are real dangers, there are imagined dangers, and there are exaggerated dangers, right? So get a good sense of that and make sure that you're taking an acceptable risk. But I think that might be an excuse, right? It might be an exaggerated or imagined fear that really is just going to help you stay at home.
Yeah,
Right.
probably.
Yeah. And maybe it's not at night. Maybe you go take yourself out to lunch.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Maybe it's a matinee, 2:00. It's always weird to go to the movies at 2:00,
You might
but
be in there by yourself, really.
even better.
Yeah, completely alone.
Yeah. Then you like everybody in the theater.
Absolutely.
Those are activities that are going to reinforce that you're good company. Right.
Take yourself on a date.
Yeah. And what's even better is it's good practice for not only for being alone, but for being with somebody else. If you feel like you're good company, then you're going to be better at being some company to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we were talking about like I think we talked about this before, the BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you are alone and somebody presents themselves and is negotiating with you for your time, then you have an agreement already that you can enjoy your own time with yourself. Right. And so that person has to be better than that. They have to be better than your solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's gonna keep the snakes out, because when you say spending time by myself has no value, then any offer is a good offer. But you have value already, and they have to be better than that.
Yeah.
That'll help you keep the quality of people in your life higher up. Would you like private intimacy coaching? Perhaps you'd like to be a guest on our show. Either way, book your free 30-minute intro call with Ezra at AskEzra.info. How about the perfectionist one?
Those are really hard.
Yeah, they are. And I think we can chip away too. Like we've gone at these other ones like head on.
Yeah.
But the perfectionist one, I think the first step is to realize that being a perfectionist is not adding value.
Exactly. It's a bad habit to get into.
Yeah, and some people defend their perfectionism. Some people will say like, oh, I'm a perfectionist and that's why I'm so good at things. And that's not it.
It makes me want to give up if I'm not good at something. Like if I'm not instantly good at it or becoming really good at it, I'm like, oh, I'm not good. I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah.
Like
And then,
I think I wrote down, I'm not good at ballet as an example, and I never will be. Well, it's like you never will be if you don't try.
Yeah, if you let perfectionism be your excuse to not accept yourself in that beginner stage. And I think you've shown a great amount of proficiency at being a beginner at things.
How so?
I mean, we've been taking on some things, right? We've been taking on some challenges, and you're starting from a baseline, right? You're starting from the beginning, and here we are. Huh?
You didn't tell me this was a skill.
Oh, does that make it harder?
No.
I hope not. Yeah, no, I mean, managing how we talk to ourselves is a skill, right? And when we first started this conversation, you sort of had this attitude of, I talk to myself how I talk to myself, and that's not going to change, right?
It's hard.
Here we are. You've already made strides with this. I am the most important, right? Or my feelings are so fucking important. Yeah. So you're already making changes.
I did my homework assignment, by the way. It was a gratitude meditation.
That's right. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. So we talked about how like having a joyful life is about being grateful, and a gratitude meditation is a great way to do that. So tell me, how did your gratitude meditation go? How did you find?
Well, I can't just sit there. So I did it while I was jogging and walking. And then I feel like it helped me breathe better, actually, because I was more focused on focusing on the exhale and relaxing, not thinking too much. And it's still hard, because I still feel like my thoughts are moving really fast. But if I can just realize, oh, I'm thinking, I'm worrying, I'm doing this, and just put a label on it, it just kind of helps. And it helps with the perfectionism. That's what made me think of that.
Yeah.
If you can think about what you're thinking about, and if you're thinking about gratitude, eventually it just starts to sink in, I hope.
Yeah, it does. It takes time. It's like a muscle. So here you are starting at the beginning. I think there's also some messages that we get about meditation that make it harder, right? And I think this idea of having like an empty head, or just having the thoughts we want to have, like, it's unreasonable. It's an unreasonable expectation. So I love that you were doing it when you were jogging or running, right? Because you're doing an activity, right? Focus on your breath, focus on the words, and then you're going to get distracted, and let that happen, and then come back to center, right? And you don't want to judge yourself for making mistakes, because we're just people. We make mistakes. And if you can let go of the judgment of performing in meditation, you're going to do a lot better, right? There's people who sit and just meditate for hours and hours a day, and they're missing the fucking point, right? They're like muscling out all the thoughts in their head until they got nothing left, and they're going, empty-headed, I'm working, I got it, and they're not really present, right? So be present, live your life, you're doing that running, you are in that physical space, and that's really valuable, because there's sights around you, there's smells, there's the feeling, there's the rhythm, and those are all part of your experience, and they can all help bring you back into your body and bring you back into your present moment.
Yeah, I think it really does.
And I'll tell you, for me, when I do, sometimes I wake up and I'm scrunched up, and I do my gratitude meditation, and I just open up. I just loosen up. Like, how wonderful is it that I am awake again?
I don't know if I could start off a morning like that, because I just spend half an hour should I get out of bed? No. Do I want to get up? No.
Well, for me, it lets me feel like I'm productive before I even get out of bed. So like, oh, I've done a thing. And let me tell you that you can feel the muscle of gratitude growing when you say you count a blessing and you go, well, yeah, kind of, but that's like a given, right? And then later you do the same one and it's like, fuck yeah. Wow, that's really wonderful, right? And you're really feeling it. Whereas before it felt like it was taken for granted, right? Like somebody said to me, I'm just grateful I've got another day, right? No day is guaranteed. So here we are, a whole new day. How wonderful. And I was like, bullshit. And after practicing my gratitude meditation, now I really feel it. I'm wonderful. Wow. How wonderful that we are alive today. We're both so lucky.
I've never been like that.
Yeah. Well, you'll get there. If you keep at it, you'll get there.
Really?
Yeah. And how wonderful it is. Everything that we get to experience is a gift.
Yeah.
And there's things that I haven't gotten to yet, right? I never in my life said thank goodness for Brussels sprouts, right?
You just said it.
Well, yeah, but I never meant it. But someday I'll get there. Someday I'll say, what a wonderful gift this little tiny sulfurous vegetable is. You'll get there and just keep at it, right? And the consequence is joy, right? I think we were talking about goals, and your goal was like, you want to be happy and healthy. And I said, well, happy is a little complicated.
Yeah.
But joyful is less complicated. And the path to joy is gratitude.
Yeah, that's how we got to that.
Yeah. And there's whole schools of thought around gratitude and joy. So I'm not the master, I'm a student. I'm just looking back at our goals from last month. So I don't think we talked much about vetting. If you're looking for a relationship, you meet somebody, right? And you're interested in starting a relationship with that person, what are you going to do to vet them?
Ask what their experience is, ask what their title is, their pronouns. Maybe they have references. Maybe they want you to fill out a checklist. Stuff like that.
Yeah, references are great. I would specifically ask for an ex-partner.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people have an issue with that. And it's because a lot of people act great while they have something to gain. And then as soon as they no longer have use for somebody, then they're not as nice to them. And that's an issue. That's an issue of maturity.
Yeah.
Right. But if they have a partner who they're no longer with, that they're on good terms with, that's a really good indicator that they're going to be civil, even when things no longer are working for you two.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. Like 99.999 whatever percent of relationships end at some point, right? So you don't want it to just be good in the beginning. I would ask community members. I would ask friends. Have you heard of this person? Do you have any experience with this person? So not just the references that they provide, but maybe find some independent references. You could ask, have you ever been accused of a consent violation?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one. It's not an easy question to answer.
Is it necessarily a red flag if they're not a part of the community, like they don't go to munches or anything at all?
To me, it is, right? But I think it's important to remember that red flags are personal, right? So like, for example, if I have one particular mental health challenge and another person has that same mental health challenge, unless they make each other worse, right? Then that's actually a green flag, because now I know that person's going to understand my mental health challenge, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I don't have any experience with that same mental health challenge, that could be a red flag for me because I'm not prepared to care for that person.
How would
Right.
you tell someone, like if you were being vetted and I asked you, Ezra, do you have any mental health challenges? What would you say? Or how would you answer that if you did?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say like I have anxiety and depression. It's not clinical, but I do have that. I also am working through some things in therapy where sometimes I feel abandoned and betrayed, even when that's not what's happening. For example, if you are like the avoidant attachment style, where like when things go south, you hide, we're not going to be a good partner set, right? Because I'm going to feel abandoned, even though it's not about me. It's about, how you're dealing with your attachment. If you're avoidant attachment style, then somebody else who's avoidant attachment style maybe is not a red flag. Maybe you guys can work on it together. But for me personally, that's a red flag, right? And so self-knowledge is super important for understanding, who's a potential partner.
So you respect that person that much more for just telling you on the first date or on the first time meeting, hey, these are my issues, but it's not going to be a problem because I'm working on it.
Or let me figure out how much of a problem it's going to be. Like I've got a partner who has some mental health challenges, but they have a stable medication regime. They have a therapist. They have a primary partner. Like I feel pretty good. If they had none of those things and the same challenges, then I'd be like, I'm not in a position to support you completely. I can't be your only, support system. But they've got a support system, and so now all of a sudden it's a different issue, right?
There's a lot of stigma about it though, because for example, I went on one date with a dom and he told me he had a sour experience with his last sub and she had a very severe mental illness, and he said for that reason, it's hard for me to want to date a sub that has mental illness. Even if you do have that support and everything, it's a red flag for that person that I met.
Well, and I think that's good self-awareness. Like you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody where if you get into a depressive episode, they're going to ghost on you in the middle of it. Better to not get into that, right? Because that's the last thing you need in being in the middle of a depressive episode, and now you're also in the brag cup, right?
Yeah, so I guess he was pretty self-aware to realize, hey, this is a red flag. I'm not going to pursue that.
Yeah, but I think it's, again, I'll say it again because it's not something that the community necessarily is ready to understand, but red flags are personal. Red flags are individual. So that was a red flag for that person. It doesn't mean that it is a red flag for everybody. And
I kind of started writing down what are red flags to me, like what are my boundaries, but it was pretty hard to write it all down.
Well, I mean, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? You write it down and that's like a start. That's like a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So you're more prepared to have that conversation again later. I mean, you're absolutely right that the stigma around mental health makes the conversation a lot harder to have. So oftentimes I'll ask the question, are there any mental health challenges that you're experiencing that I need to be aware of? Right? And they'll say, nope. And I don't know anybody who doesn't have some anxiety and some depression.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll answer the question and say, sometimes I get anxious and sometimes I get depressed. I'm not medicated for either, but that is something I do. My biggest depressive episode was like a month, but that's what it is. Sometimes I get sad. Do you have anxiety and depression? And so now I've made myself vulnerable, and I've created a safe space for them to be vulnerable also.
I guess this question never has come up in my previous vetting, but now it would be a good one to ask. But I just think it takes a lot of guts to really put that out there.
Yeah, it's tough. And that may not be something that happens on the first date. And I've been lied to. I've had somebody tell me they don't have any mental health challenges. And then in the middle of a scene, they said, oh, I'm having an episode.
Aww.
And the mental health challenge was less of an issue than the dishonesty. I can't be with somebody who's dishonest. Like, what else are you lying about?
That's
Are
a
you
big
lying?
thing to lie about.
Right. And are you lying about what you're lying about? Right. Because then I can't even ask the question of what else are you lying about? Because they're dishonest. So who knows?
Yeah. I've kind of learned that when people are liars, it's kind of like crazy making to just kind of try to figure out what are they lying about. Just assume if they lied to you a couple times, they're just a liar. You're never going to figure out what's truth and what's lies.
Yeah.
So I can see that was a red flag to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I need honesty, especially when we're doing high risk behaviors.
Because mental health is going to pop up in BDSM. It's definitely going to pop up.
Yeah, and it's not to put anybody down. It's challenging. It's hard. It's not easy to know when to talk about it. But, that's why I had that conversation. Is there any mental health challenges I should be aware of?
That's a great vetting question.
And then like talking to partners is huge. Talking to friends is huge. And it can feel like a binary. It can feel like, are they good? They're good. Great. But that's just because you want to get laid, right? Because you're just rushing through it. It's more complicated than that. What do they do when they get upset? What do they do when they're heartbroken? Do they show up all the time? They say they're going to show up. Do they bail? Do they hide? Like, what do they do? Everybody has bad behaviors. Everybody has, character flaws. And so instead of looking for like a binary of are they okay or not, maybe try to get to know them a little bit through their friends.
Yeah, I like how you said, what do you do when you're upset? Yeah, like, are you avoidant? Do you get more anxious? Do you need more attention? What do you respond? What do you do?
Yeah, and there's surveys for attachment style, which are really interesting. And again, no attachment style is necessarily a red flag, but if you know your attachment style and how it interacts with their attachment style, then that could be a red flag for sure.
I thought of another topic, but I don't know if we'll have time for it today. It's kind of
sure.
long.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm meeting a lot more people that are poly, and I guess I'm just not sure what I am.
That's okay. Yeah, it's
Especially
okay.
When it comes to BDSM, you'll meet like doms that have multiple subs, and I'm just like, I don't really know where I fall with all that.
Yeah, it can be tough because we get a lot of messages of compulsory monogamy when we're growing up. We get a lot of messages about like you have to be with one person or mess around all you want, but eventually you'll settle down and be with one person, right?
Yeah, there's a shame game with that.
And I think there's nothing wrong with monogamy, but I think that a lot of people get forced into monogamy. They get given these messages. I know I was given this message that there really isn't a healthy alternative, right?
I think I received that too.
Yeah. So I identify as polyamorous. I was like a hierarchy kind of polyamory before. And now I feel like I'm working on being more of a relationship anarchist kind of polyamory.
What do you mean hierarchy? So there's different types?
Yeah, there's definitely different types.
What?
Yeah. No, there's like kitchen table poly, relationship anarchy, hierarchy poly, solo poly. Yeah, there's all kinds.
And then there's open, like I don't understand.
It's okay. Yeah, take your time. No rush. You could try some stuff on. Open often describes anything besides monogamy. However, it also separately will describe relationships that are like swingers, like people who are not open to loving other partners, but are open to having sex with other partners. So I would describe, so open can be used to describe all of the things that are non-monogamy.
Okay, umbrella.
Yeah. Or it can be used to describe relationships that are not monogamous, but also not polyamorous.
Oh, yeah. So swingers would be a good example of that.
Yeah. So like somebody might say, oh, well, you can fuck whoever you want to, or you can fuck somebody in front of me. But if you fall in love with somebody, then that's a problem. And we need to not do that.
Because I think I met a couple that they were okay if they are at like a swingers club or in a swingers environment, they would do that. But then outside of that environment, they were basically monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
guess every couple
Yeah.
defines.
Situational openness.
So kitchen table is where they're literally all able to talk to each other.
Sit down and have dinner. Yeah. And that really describes that like everybody needs to be okay with everybody.
I think I'd be too jealous for that. Like I'd see their other partner and just think, man, I really like that shirt they're wearing. Like, I don't know. I don't think I could handle that. At least not right now.
Well, sure, maybe not right now, but I would caution you against feeling like jealousy is a reason to change your behavior, right? Because jealousy is like fear. Jealousy is not a primary emotion. Jealousy is a secondary emotion. And so what is it? Are you afraid? Are you insecure? Are you angry? Are you, like what's actually going on that you're feeling jealous, right?
I guess it does involve like fear of not being good enough for that person, fear that they're going to leave you or they're going to only want that other partner over you. And there's a lot of fear behind that.
Yeah. And that's a fear based on insecurity, and insecurity doesn't have to be permanent, right? And so what would life be like if you weren't insecure, if you felt totally secure in your partner? And given your previous relationship experience, then like I understand, like none of those seem to be all that stable. But if you could imagine a relationship where you just loved that person and you loved seeing that person enjoy themselves, like imagine going to a restaurant and going, that's not my lasagna. He's enjoying that lasagna more than my lasagna, right? Like it sounds silly, but that's kind of what's going on. So you can learn to enjoy your partner's enjoyment. And that's called compersion.
Kind of like hierarchy. If they've been with that partner, like for example, the Dom I went on a date with, he was married to a woman for like 10 years and then he's looking for a sub. And I'm like, I'm always going to feel like your least important partner. Like this is your wife. I'm just like the side chick is what monogamy would call it. Like, I don't know how to get out of that feeling.
Well, that may be real. That might be real. You might be expendable. If they have a hierarchy style polyamory and, that person is married and they've been married for 10 years and that's not going to change. If that wife has a problem with you, you're gone.
So right? That is a hierarchy.
Yeah. Well, that the way that I've described it, I don't necessarily know what their experience is, but
it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah.
Because if the wife was like, hey, I don't like her, like, oh, she's gone.
Yeah. That's called veto power.
Oh.
Yeah. Where if a partner can decide if one of their partners is problematic.
What's the anarchy type?
So that's tough to describe, but I'll do my best. I think of it as the opposite of hierarchical polyamory, right? I think of it as I have a relationship with each person I have a relationship with, and any other relationship should have no bearing on that relationship, right?
Legally, you can only have one spouse.
Who says I have to be married? I don't think I'm going to get married again. I've been married twice. It didn't work out either time. I think I'm good.
So anarchy would probably...
That piece of paper didn't do me shit for good. Yeah. So
yeah, I've been married.
Yeah. So, but to me, it's almost like a decolonization of romance, where like I'm really, instead of thinking of partners as possessions, I'm thinking of partners as discrete people that I have relationships with, and really being crystal clear that they do not owe me anything beyond like helping me understand what should be expected and showing up when they say they're going to show up. Beyond that, they don't owe me anything. Live your life. And it's really valuable to me right now because I'm reeling from that 24/7 master slave dynamic. Like that was so much for me.
Oh,
And I just can't imagine that, because even with all of that, it didn't work out. Even with like total control, at a certain point, they just stopped communicating and they just did whatever they wanted to without talking to me about it. And I'm like,
that's interesting.
yeah. So what was it worth in the end? Right. I'd rather have somebody who can be completely honest with me and feels empowered by our relationship and doesn't feel any restrictions at all. Like, and it's like an experiment for me, right? I mean, this is where I'm at right now. And I don't know if I go back to hierarchy polyamory or if it'll be different, but I'm trying to ask nothing of my partners but their love.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I guess like probably every polycule is different.
I would love if anybody wants to leave a comment on how I'm wrong about polyamory, anarchy and stuff, because honestly, I'm still just exploring it. I'm still trying it out. So if I got it wrong, tell me.
I'm just like the kind of person, before I try anything, I have to find out every little detail about it. I'm like, okay, what is this? So what happens if this happens? What happens if I go to a funeral? Do I bring like both my significant others, or like, how do I decide? It's complicated.
That's what's beautiful about it, is there isn't one set of rules. So what do you want to do?
Oh gosh, I like rules.
So make them.
Yeah.
Or find somebody who made them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really beautiful, because then it's all meaningful, right? I think sometimes we do things because that's the way our parents did it, and that's the way their parents did it, and that's the way their parents did it, and the meaning's gone. But with this, we get to decide how we do things, how we live our lives, and we can find the meaning on our own. Thanks for watching the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast. Support our show at patreon.com/AskEzra. Join us at the personal growth tier and receive a special thank you on the next podcast episode. A very special thank you to both Sarah Nash and Deb Matson for being Patreon supporters at the personal growth tier and helping make the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast possible.